You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group with the same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Spreaker is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. This podcast is particularly not for entertainment purposes, and the views expressed by the host of this podcast are opinion-based. However, they do not come without facts, research, statistics, and truth, whether other people like it or not, and no matter how harsh or complicated it may be. This is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Hey there, Michigan sports fanatics, and welcome to Michigan Sports Truth, episode 252 on Spreaker. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Ed Smith. How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing quite fine, Taylor. How are you?
Good. Got a lot to discuss, including some eventful occurrences at Michigan State University, including the continuance of the sexual assault and the football program extending head coach Mark Antonio's contract by a year, regardless of it, and Tom Izzo, the head men's basketball coach, firing back at ESPN color commentator and talk show host in Indiana, Dan Dockich, for constantly labeling Spartans fans whiners on his Twitter handle. Ay, ay, ay. Plus a little Lions news and Tigers pitchers and catchers reporting, which we'll just mention. But we will update you on their upcoming spring training schedule. Plus, we'll recap college basketball itself, even including my Central Michigan Chippewas, who have now lost 2 key games consecutively, which pisses me off. And, of course, we'll recap the Pistons and Red Wings and talk about the trade exploration by the Pistons for Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson, and the inevitable suspension, which was 6 games, on Red Wings left winger Gustav Nyquist, who viciously slashed Minnesota Wild defenseman Jared Spurgeon. And, of course, 5 questions, but let's get to the Michigan State football stuff, shall we? First. Yeah, I can hardly hear you.
Sure thing. Ready when you are.
Yep.
Touchdown, MSU!
The Spartans football team program was going to continue their investigation of the sexual assault. They suspended their 3 players and 1 coaching staff member, as we recall, indefinitely, pending the investigation. And now we hear recently they approved their 1-year extension for head coach Mark D'Antonio. The team president says it was a sign of confidence amid the sexual assault investigations. So, Buck Gino the third, one of my talk show co-hosts, chimed on and gave it a quick boo on that. I don't know if it was for real or just sarcasm, but Ed, I may not know too much about this, but I want to let you give us your thoughts on that.
Really, it's in terms of not just the football program, really the whole university has gone through tumultuous, I guess you could say, 3 weeks so far, the whole month of February, so to speak. You could say it's had minor success a little bit with the basketball program, staying, having a moderately good season, not as great as the expectations they might have hoped to have had at the start, but still it's been a good season so far. Pretty better, but not worse than might have been in years past. But other than that, it's just been a myriad of bad news after bad news. First, the Larry Nassar allegations, who was, of course, a doctor, a university doctor, not to mention a doctor for the gymnastics team, as well as the Team USA gymnastics team, undergoing his allegations for multiple occurrences of sexual assault, not to mention civil trials and whatnot. So really giving a big black eye to the university, and not just the athletics program. We consider to mention that the gymnastics coach, Kate Lagans, knew about it. So it makes her look bad, makes the university look bad, obviously makes the athletic department look bad. Then when you factor in the whole this incidental sexual assault probe now regarding the football program, my goodness, I was like one bad thing after another. So I'm not sure if this was actually the right time frame or the right time in terms of timing per se, in terms of to give Mark D'Antoni the extension, because it seems like you're trying to sweep this under the rug or trying to deflect the negativity onto something else. There's no question that Mark D'Antoni deserves an extension of any kind. If it were up to me, he'd probably be the coach at MSU for life. Essentially, I would tell him, hey, you can have the coach the job for life. You can leave whenever you want to, because he's essentially built the program to what it has been over this past decade. So yes, they had a horrible year this year, but I wouldn't be too surprised if they ratchet things back up to what they usually were in this next upcoming season. But I'm not sure with the timing of this news and the situation that you're in right now, they probably could have picked a better scenario to announce it rather than being this seen as a way to, like I said, sweep something under the rug or to put blame on something else. So, got no problem with D'Antoni getting the extension. I just have an issue with the timing of it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Yeah, the timing, not so much, but they just felt whenever the opportunity presented itself amid the sexual assault investigation, they just went ahead and took it, got that 1 year extension approved for head coach Mark D'Antonio. But it was best for them. It could have been best for them to wait until it was all cleared up. It's not even nearly cleared up yet, as far as we can tell. So, with that in mind, we're gonna keep our eyes on this sexual assault investigation and further update you on what's been going on TalkShoe and on Spreaker week after week, day after day. But let's transition to basketball for a second.
Valentine for the win!
After the 74-66 win over the Ohio State Buckeyes last Tuesday night, Tom Izzo, in his post-game press conference, fired back at Dan Dockich for his constant tweets about Spartan fans whining, Sparty whining on his Twitter handle at Dan Dockich, the ESPN color commentator and talk show host on 1070 The Fan in Indiana, in a city in the state of Indiana or some shit. But anyway, Dan Dockich in one of his tweets went way over the line in his screenshot tweet that ended up couldn't even get to U of M. Sparty constantly whines and now just dumb. couldn't even get to U of M. And the entire ESPN organization was looking at it on social media, and they told him to delete it, plus that other tweet to Ryan Schuling, the host of the Schuling Report on the Team 92 on FM WQTX in Lansing and St. John's. And he went ahead and deleted it, but Ryan Schuling screenshot it just in the nick of time and talked about it on his show and labeled Dan Dockich a coward, and that was rightful of Ryan Schuling to do, because Dan Dockich was a coward because he canceled his interview. He canceled some of his upcoming interviews, and he may cancel his trip to Breslin Center and to call it the next Spartans game at Breslin Center, home against Nebraska on ESPNU Thursday at 7. Let's talk about that before we recap the Iowa and Ohio State games. Tom Izzo said Dan Dockich owes an apology to the MSU fans, and rightfully so he did. And then Dan Dockich on Twitter says, unreal respect to Izzo, Sparty, and its fans. Looking forward to having this conversation. But he still never apologized, and that's still, Dan Dockich was still being rude. And when the Spartan fans expected him to publicly apologize and say, I'm sorry, he didn't fucking do that. And Dan Dockich is still showing that he's truly a rude fucking son of a bitch coward. And I think there's got to be some kind of ramification going along to it for constantly naming Sparty fans whiners and going over the line with it, and then not apologizing for it after Tom Izzo fired back at him at his post-game press conference. So, Ed, I'll let you fire away on that one.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's a very, in terms of things that MSU does not need going for them in the wrong way this month, this was another one in the crapshoot, so to speak. I will say, though, that Dan Dockich's comments were definitely of the unprofessional variety. Number one, you are an analyst, a play-by-play person on a national network. That's supposed to carry a sense of impartiality to your work and how you do things. So unless this was, a horrible situation like a bad school with a bad reputation, there was really no need for Dan Dockich to conduct himself in this type of fashion. So shame on him from that standpoint, and I definitely agree, sympathize a little bit with MSU fans having the reaction that they did. Also, not to mention the fact, his son, Andrew, plays and goes to Michigan. So that's two strikes against him already. It's going to automatically create a bubble in the minds of many MSU fans. Listen, you're trashing our program. Your son goes to our school, our biggest rival. Yeah, what else are we going to think of you except a biased-ass jackass? So it really is a situation where Dockich brought if there's any criticism, he brought it upon himself. I think he half-assed it with his response. I think there should be an apology involved of some sort, some variety. I think there's something that I mentioned. I looked on Twitter this morning saying that I believe there was an MSU Purdue game or something at Breslin tomorrow, and it's a list apparently that Dan Dockich will be on the call for that one. So if that stays true, that'll be really interesting to see how that goes about. But just to time suspended Keith Olbermann for engaging in Twitter behavior with Penn State fanatics. So you mean to tell me that something similar can't be used for Dan Dockett's simulation situation? Any some form of punishment, maybe even a fine, if not an outright suspension. I don't think he'll be fired. It's not like he used any disgusting epithets or demonized school or whatever the case may be. He was just trolling some diehard fan base, and they fought back at him. So if anything, I believe there should be, like I said, some form of punishment, whether it be a fine or a suspension or not. But he can't get away from this completely unscathed and scot-free.
I believe that's the correct response, but that's still going to be one of the 5 questions at the end of this episode. But Dan Dockett going completely over the line, not apologizing for it, just sickening. Personally, he deserves a bitch slap. But more importantly, corporately, he deserves a fair punishment. Because firing him would be a little extreme. So, the Spartans went back to their winning ways after getting pounded by your Wolverines. 77-66 over Iowa at Breslin Centers. The Spartans beat the Hawkeyes, for God's sake, and then they beat the Ohio State Buckeyes, who have been struggling lately. 74-66 at the same building in East Lansing. Nick Ward, Miles Bridges, both continuing to do their things. Laurel's Tum Tum Nairn Jr. still sucking. He even scored 0 fucking points in one of those games. He didn't do diddly squat. Only 1 turnover and 1 personal foul. That is an example of why he does not even want to play basketball anymore.
Didn't he also have a bad game against Michigan also, where he shot up the brick?
Yeah. He sucks.
So basically, he's their Zach Irvin.
Yeah. But he came up huge, and we'll get to that later on in that game against Wisconsin. That upset win over the Badgers. But
in terms of MSU, though, there was at least one positive, I guess you could say, besides if Tum Tum was not contributing. In this case, the Ohio State game, Alvin Ellis definitely did. He had 18 points, 15 of those came on a barrage of threes. And in terms of final margin of victory for MSU, they needed all of that and then some.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Spartans will have to take all that plus some to West Lafayette, Indiana, and play the 16th ranked Purdue Boilermakers today, Saturday at 4 on ESPN. That's going to be a good one, but almost a good one. I think Purdue is going to shellac the Spartans. Well, almost. Kind of in between a close game and a rout. Probably Purdue at least by 10 or 12, somewhere around there.
I don't know, because MSU, they're coming on, you could say the Michigan game was a bump in the road. Other than that, they've won 4 out of their last 5 games.
Yeah.
They have 5 games left in their schedule. Now, granted, 3 of those are going to be on the road, including this one and then the 2 back-to-back. But at least you have 2 home games sandwiched in between, so it gives them a reprieve of sorts. And in terms of conference standings, they're really not that far back, because it's a little bit of a logjam from 1 to 6 or 1 to 7. But MSU, in terms of, as well as tied with Northwestern, they are 2 games back of the conference lead. Now, it is a 3-team tie between Maryland, Purdue, and Wisconsin, but the math shows MSU was right in there. So if they were, let's say, for instance, to take this game against Purdue today, and since they play in Maryland last game of the year, win this one, that's 2 gigantic wins you will have in terms of gaining ground. Could ultimately be the difference in how this Big Ten conference rattles out at the end.
That's a good point. It's a good point. We'll have to see what happens. Then they're home against the Nebraska Cornhuskers Thursday at 7 on ESPNU. Like we mentioned, Dan Dockich expected to be on the call, but we may never know if he'll make it. But anyway, the Nebraska Cornhuskers have been struggling as of late, or this season. I expect the Spartans to win that one, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they have a good opportunity to finish strong here. It may not be to give them a high ranked seeding like a top 6 or top 5 seeding, but it should at the very least keep them out of that bubble and have them safely in.
Yep, that's true. So let's go to the Michigan Wolverines now.
For 3, yes, sir.
They clobbered the Indiana Hoosiers 75-63 in Bloomington at Assembly Hall last Sunday at 1 on CBS. The Wolverines dominated, and the Hoosiers obviously struggled, especially in the second half or especially in the first half, because Michigan led by about 10 or so at halftime, and then they never even let Indiana back within 3 or 2 points, because the Wolverines kept the Hoosiers down by at least 7 or 6. That's as close as the Hoosiers could come in that contest. The Wolverines were showing that they had the continuity after their blowout win in Ann Arbor over Michigan State the week before. That they've got the touch now. Even when Zach Irvin didn't perform, they worked as a team, and they got the job done in Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah, in Assembly Hall, a place that they've really had some difficulties winning in recent years. Like even some of their best teams, like in 2012 and 2013, where they're at one point ranked number 1 in the country, even they struggled to win in Bloomington. So for this team to get this done, now granted, it does speaks to how bad Indiana has looked this season. They're 3 or so games below 500 within conference. They have a very below middle of the road record with like 15-11 or so. So unless they have a fire run in the conference tournament, they won't get into the big dance. But still, this is a win that Michigan needed to have in terms of continuing the momentum that they had from that big win against the Spartans, and knowing what's up next, or what is upcoming for their schedule. This was as big of a win they needed to have, both this one and especially the Wisconsin victory.
Absolutely. And then they return home Thursday night, and they come up with, and first off they trailed by as many as just 2, I guess, probably 4. I only caught some of it at Ruby Tuesday at work while the game transpired. But the Michigan Wolverines came out in front in the last few minutes, and they beat the 11th ranked Wisconsin Badgers 64-58. They managed to hold them off and hang on for that victory in Ann Arbor, and it was just a sweet feeling. Zach Irvin actually stepped up when Derek Walton had a rough night, like we mentioned before, and the Wisconsin defense held Derek Walton in check, and that's when the hands fell into Zach Irvin to try to get the job done, and he dropped 18 points on him. 18.
Finally, it's like we've been waiting for Zach Irvin to show some type of senior leadership and it came at, I guess you can use the term the saying, better late than never. It perfectly applied to this situation. Because while Derek Walton has been turning it up as of late, Zach Irvin has been particularly dreadful for the better part of this season. So when Walton was having his down game, it was a great opportunity for Zach Irvin to finally take advantage, and thank goodness he did. Another player, by the way, who was consistently done a great job in terms of showing improvement game after game, it seems, has been Moritz Wagner, the big German. You guess you can call him center or forward or whatever. But he's shown a lot of versatility, so to speak. He shows you a little bit of dribble every once in a while, but he's really great inside the paint. And he even has a 3-point shot of his own. He's got an outside shot. He had 3 of 6 from downtown in this game. So it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because there was video of him at the Pistons game, the Pistons-Mavericks game, where he got to see Dirk Nowitzki, his fellow countryman, in attendance, and that he even met up with Dirk after the game. So you can tell a little bit that Wagner models his game in essence after Dirk. So that's a very great model to go on. But it wasn't just Wagner, it wasn't just Irvin. It was also guys like Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman, who's come along as of late. He had another fine game, okay game as well. 5 of 8 shooting, very accurate from the floor. Just little bits and pieces of contribution to help out the team. But like you said, Taylor, the effort and the production of Zach Irvin was really the difference, and it was especially needed in this game when Derek Walton wasn't at his particularly usual best.
So with that upset win, the Badgers, as Buck Gino predicted for the Wisconsin Badgers to drop to 16th, number 16 in the top 25 rankings. I have not looked at the rankings yet, but I can look right now on ESPN.com unless you have it already. Going to ESPN.com right about now. Waiting here for those rankings here. There's a link. Oh, yeah, there's standings. Wait a minute. Just a minute. Rankings. There we go. Where's Wisconsin here? In the AP Top 25, Wisconsin is still at number 11 in the AP poll. 10 in the USA Today coaches poll. They might have to drop from 11 down to like maybe the top 15, if not the top 20, if they were to drop after that loss to Michigan. But
I don't think they'll drop that far. I think, if anything, at worst, they'll probably drop to 16 or 17. I don't see them bottoming. That's what you call total bottoming out, if that were to happen, if that were the case.
Well, that's still in the top 20. 16, 17, that's out of the top 15. Just so if we do the math here. But
not all the way to number 20. I don't think they go that far.
No. I said top 20. I didn't say number 20.
No, they stay top 20 for sure, but I just don't see them dropping that far.
Right. Good. Yep. But for Michigan, another one of our 5 questions is, how closer do the Wolverines get to the top 25 rankings? And we'll answer that at the end of right before the end of our show.
But in terms of what this means for their tournament resume, it's a very, very good win, because it was a top at the time of this game, a top 15, borderline top 10 ranked team, one of the best performing teams in all the conference. I mean, like I mentioned before, they're tied with Maryland, Purdue for that conference standing lead. So for them to get this type of victory, albeit it was on their floor and not, in Madison, but still, a win is a win. You play the teams that's on your schedule, and Michigan got the job done through a strong performance and And despite Derek Walton, one of, if not their best players, having an off night, they still managed to get the job done. So that should really speak a lot to the committee in terms of what this means for Michigan's chances. It definitely does bolster their chances. I don't know if they'll get, like, say, a top, get to a number 8 or number 9 ranking or seeding. But at the moment, things do look good for their tournament chances. There may be a borderline bubble team, but they seem to be, as Joe Lunardi predicts in his current bracketology and his current rankings, that they're one of those last 4 teams in, so to speak, so they can avoid the nefarious play-in game and just get straight on to the first weekend, so to speak, to begin their trek if the tournament had started today. But they still got work to do. They got 5 games left, as does Michigan State. Now, here's the kicker for Michigan. 4 of these last 5 games will be on the road. So this is their biggest test so far, without question, for how the rest of the season can play out. Now, they've done a great job. That Michigan State win has really bolstered their momentum, their psyche. So they've powered through that with now this big win over against Wisconsin. If they can finish this season strong, let's say 3-2. If they go 4-1, I'll be shocked. But if they manage to get at least 3 wins out of this 5-game stretch, without question, they'll be in the tournament. And if they have a good enough, respectable performance in the conference tournament, I could then see them topping out at that 8th seed or 9th seed in whatever region they're in. Because at the moment, ESPN's Joe Lunardi, with his bracketology, has both Michigan and Michigan State as 10 seeds in the West and Midwest regions, respectively. So, obviously, still a whole lot of time and games left to be played to really sort this whole thing out. But so far, so good. Things look bright for both of our college teams in terms of getting to the tournament.
Very excellent analysis on the future NCAA tournament bracket, Ed.
Thanks.
Welcome. Now my Central Michigan Chippewas, they lost 2 in a row to 2 easy teams at the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, 81-76. They let the Redhawks fly past them, especially in the second half. Redhawks led by as many as 10 or 7, and they managed to hang on. The Chippewas tried to come back, but they failed miserably in the end. That's one thing that was one of those losses that pissed me off. And then they came back to McGurk Arena in Mount Pleasant for a revenge game against the Buffalo Bulls, who were coming into the game 7-5 in the MAC, despite a losing overall record. And Buffalo, after the beginning of the first half, came back out on top, and they held the Chippewas behind them in check. And the Chippewas never even tied the contest. They came as close as a 1-point deficit, and the Buffalo Bulls managed to hang on to win 99-93. The Chippewas fell flat in the end against the Buffalo Bulls. Not quite an easy matchup, but the Chippewas losing to the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, who have a worse losing record than the Buffalo Bulls overall, even though it's on the road, it still pisses me off that nobody else but Marcus Keene and Braylon Rayson kept stepping up. And now Marcus Keene actually had a rough Saturday a week ago in Oxford, Ohio, against the Redhawks. Braylon Rayson was the only Chippewa to step up. That was like a suicidal shot to the fucking head for CMU. And then they come into Buffalo, and Marcus Keene scored 27 points, and they named it a new career high. At the score.com did. No, it was not. Marcus Keene scored had scored a career-high 50 points earlier in this season. The score.com was being a dipshit on that one. Oh, actually, he actually Marcus Keene actually scored an all-time high in a single season, passing Dan Marley, a former Central Michigan Chippewa, now an all-time in total points scored in a single season. So I dropped the ball on that one again, so that was my bad again. Like I did on Talk Show, I corrected myself there. So congratulations to Marcus Keene, but that doesn't matter. 2 straight losses are 2 straight losses, and that's what's most important. And the Chippewas have
2 bad losses, very bad losses. In terms of resume, ball-buster killer losses,
yep.
This is right up there.
2 suicidal shots to the fucking heads for the Maroon and Gold, my school. And I'm boiling hot about it. Now they have to go to Now they have to welcome in the Ball State Cardinals into McGurk Arena today, Saturday at 4:30, and then Tuesday they got the Northern Illinois Huskies at 7 at McGurk Arena. They better beat the shit out of those 2 teams, because if they lose to either one of those teams, I'm going to be firing back. Even hotter than ever. Now let's take a little bit of a break from basketball and transition to pro football for a little bit.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
The Lions have informed one of their backup quarterbacks, Dan Orlovsky, whom we remember for backing up into the end zone 9 years ago, that former Michigan Wolverine quarterback Jake Rudock will be the new backup quarterback behind Matthew Stafford now. So, in other words, Dan Orlovsky is done in Detroit. Done in Detroit. And that's got to be good news, because Dan Orlovsky was one of the worst quarterbacks in Lions history, especially with what I just mentioned, the backing up into the end zone for a suicidal safety by accident in Minnesota. And Rudock last preseason was simply outplaying Orlovsky. And the Lions gave Orlovsky the backup spot anyway, and released Jake Rudock and then sign him to the practice squad. And I find all that shit disgraceful, because the Lions are the Lions. Typically, because they keep kicking good rookies, good draft picks to the curb, especially the Ford family, Martha Firestone Ford and Bill Ford Jr. and the rest of the administration, including Sheila Hamp, Rod Wood, and Bob Quinn. Rod Wood, the president, and Bob Quinn, the GM. They're all a bunch of typical Lions Kool-Aid drinking company men who don't give a shit about this franchise.
I'll admit, I think in terms of talking about Bob Quinn, a little bit premature. Yes, he is. He did announce he's keeping Caldwell, but it seemed to be the reasonable thing to do, given the fact that the Lions did make the playoffs. You know, if you want to argue and debate the legitimacy of that, the facts are the facts. They made the playoffs. He is the head coach, and it's not like it was a multi-years extension anyway. It's like what the Tigers did with Brad Ausmus. You know, you bring him back, let you see what he does this last year, and if things don't go well, you can just mutually part ways anyway without officially firing him.
Yeah.
Plus Bob Quinn has stated that he would not mind delving into free agency to try would be to try to do whatever it takes to land a good signing that could help, bring the Lions that much closer to ever promising greatness, so to speak. So
at least a playoff win, for God's sake.
Obviously, getting more than one playoff win in the past 60 years, that would be a good start. So for Quinn to make that type of statement, has me a little bit of the optimistic nature, thinking, okay, he kind of knows what he's doing. It would help since he was studied for so long under the tutelage of Bill Belichick and the Patriots in that organization. So I'm not saying he's going to recreate the same damn dynasty, but it would be helpful. It would be nice to know that he's using those teachings and putting them to good work.
Absolutely. We need Jake Rudock to be the backup quarterback in case Matthew Stafford gets injured, which Stafford almost did when dislocating his finger, and they activated Jake Rudock to the active roster, and they gave him a healthy scratch afterwards because Stafford appeared to be quote unquote fine after that dislocation in his middle throwing finger, wearing a glove on his throwing hand. But in my opinion, I thought the Lions should have gave Stafford a rest just to cure his.
Well, they couldn't because they're in the middle of fighting for their playoff lives. They've just gotten the next victory, and they're trying to do whatever they can to clinch the division title. So they would have gotten killed by the press and by the fans for saying, "What the hell are you doing, resting our starting quarterback, the guy who's been the sole reason why you got those damn 9 wins to begin with, him and Matt Prater, aside from Matt Prater."
What happened to their offense, though?
Yeah, bad foot or knee injury, sure, but this is his finger. This is a one finger. Yes, it's on his throwing hand, but it's still one finger, and he can still hand the ball off. He can do whatever, a lot of sorts of other things.
Yeah.
It might not have been an ideal injury, but Stafford has played through worse. Literally, he's played through worse. Do I need to mention the Browns game in 2009? No, I do not. So, knowing that the stakes were much higher, playoff spot on the line, division title on the line, all that, you couldn't just rest Stafford there. No, you got to play him. Until he literally falls apart, you got to play him in that situation.
Yeah, that's true. Stafford's got all kinds of tricks up his sleeve, even though the rest of his offense is letting him down, especially the receivers and the offensive line. They all got to get better. The running backs, too. The entire offense in general.
Running backs are fine. You just need to slight tinker your offensive line.
That's true.
Max Zinner looks such.
Yeah, he was lightening up.
He looked pretty damn good, and that was, I don't know if that was partly him or the offensive or the play calling from Jim Bob Cooter or what. But he looked pretty damn good in his zone. So imagine him with 100% Theo Riddick and 100% Amir Abdullah gives you a nice three-headed monster running back spot. If anything, you could probably try to see what you can improve upon from your receiver standpoint. I know he may throw some red flags because he is coming off of a horrible patella injury, but the Giants did just release Victor Cruz. That's a guy who you can place next to Golden Tate, either on the same side in the slot. He could be a very good weapon to draw attention away from whatever double or triple coverage Tate may be garnering. And that's a good weapon to bring upon, especially in the case that you might have to part ways with not Marvin Jones, but TJ Jones, I believe his name is, or in the case that Anquan Bolden retires, that'd be a good backup option to have. Hey, let's just bring Victor Cruz. But just a minor suggestion from my end, that's all. Nothing too serious. I doubt they'd be going in the situation anyway, but you never know.
Yep. Yeah, we might use Victor Cruz along with Golden Tate. Speaking of wide receivers, Marvin Jones, I thought was released by the Lions, but no, I guess not. Marvin Jones was ripped by Chris Carter, rightfully so, because Marvin Jones tailed off in the end of his season. A great start to the season ruined by a tragic ending. And that was just part of the offense tailing off on Matthew Stafford right there, like we mentioned before.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't just Stafford's finger giving him promises. Another thing that hurt him and hurt the team as a whole was his wideouts not catching the damn ball. And Marvin Jones was one of those problems in that respect and in that essence.
That's true. So we're going to transition back to basketball, but stay in the pros here and go to the Pistons here.
Left sideline, 3, and he answers.
Kentavious Caldwell-Pope strikes again and gives the Pistons an upset win in Toronto at Air Canada Centre over the Raptors last Sunday, 102-101 with 13.2 seconds left. The Pistons came back from as many as almost 20. They came back from down 16 to beat the Raptors 102-101 at Air Canada Centre. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope struggling from three-point range, but that 1-3 that he hit was the game winner. It wasn't just key. That won the game for the Pistons, and Marcus Morris in the end sealed it with his defensive screening, forcing a miss, and the Pistons would barely hang on for that win. How sweet was that?
Yeah, it was a great effort, great comeback victory. I mean, like you mentioned, they were down 16 points at one point. Had a strong fourth quarter finish. By the way, Tobias Harris, another strong game for him, 24 solid points off of 9 and 13 shooting. So multiple players offensively for the Pistons getting the job done when it needed the most. Of course, KCP with the game winner, Marcus Morris with the defensive stop. All around great effort and a great team effort to pull out a victory against a very great, pretty solid, pretty talented Toronto Raptors team that, in terms of at the end of the season, could be seen as the legit number 2 team in the East behind Cleveland. So this is a very, very good victory for the Pistons in that case.
Then they play back-to-back games. They go to Milwaukee at BMO Harris Bradley Center, and they fall flat to the Milwaukee Bucks, 102-89. There's no excuse for being tired. They were tired, I get it, but there was no excuse for that kind of loss. I don't remember what happened, but they trailed for most of the game.
They got ran over like a flat tire. So that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just an off game for them, but they still have to keep pace for that final playoff spot. Maybe try to get into the 7th seed or 6th seed. They led 62-35 at home at the Palace Wednesday night against the Dallas Mavericks, and they almost handed the Mavericks that game on a silver platter, but they held on by 7 points. The Mavericks outscored them in the third quarter unanimously, especially the second half of that third quarter. But the Pistons did everything in their power to keep the Mavericks in check, because the Mavericks had such an awful first half. Dirk Nowitzki quoted, "We had no energy, no this or that for that game, no feel for it." And the Mavericks were struggling. They were like in the middle of the outside looking in area outside of that playoff picture in the Western Conference standings, while the Pistons were playing with more heart in that first half, more determination. Even though Stan Van Gundy didn't play Boban Marjanovic like he did in Milwaukee, Boban Marjanovic didn't score any points, but picked up 4 key rebounds. He was pretty good. He did a very good job against the Milwaukee Bucks when Andre Drummond and Aaron Baines were running out of gas. And I thought I thought Stan Van Gundy could have used Boban for some of the second half to try to get the Pistons to within as big as a 10-point lead, maybe a 15-point lead, somewhere around that range. Not quite at 20, but close to 10 or 15.
Yeah, to keep the leads as sustainable as possible, especially when you have the big guy in Boban, have him, basically be a force near the rim, be that wall, form that effing wall, as Stan would has famously said. So that could have been a viable strategy for SVG to use, but he didn't. Almost came at the bit him in the ass, but it didn't, thank goodness. And like you mentioned, Taylor, with that 8th spot, at the moment, they would be currently slated to face Cleveland. They get destroyed in the first round, predictably so. So in terms of who they need to face, prefer to face, my dream scenario, you would hope that maybe Boston or Atlanta finishes at that 3 spot and the Pistons somehow, some way, which is not entirely impossible. They're only 2 games behind, which is coincidentally behind Indiana. Just get to that 6th seed and see what happens. You have a better chance of winning a game as a 6th seed than you would be in an 8th seed, because you're an 8th seed, you're facing Cleveland, you're facing LeBron, Kyrie, and the rest of the gang. You're getting crushed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially now that they've added Kyle Korver.
Yeah. Yeah, and the more they keep playing Aaron Baines, the more I'm thinking, come on, are you serious? You're not playing Boban Marjanovic? I mean, Aaron Baines did a decent job, had done a recent job as of late, picking up rebounds as of late, but his putback in traffic still kill him. His attempts at putbacks in traffic still kill me, and Aaron Baines still scores a very low amount of points, one of the lowest amounts of points that I've ever seen as a backup center, and Aaron Baines continues to play like an ugly red-haired Seamus caveman, and still the Pistons have to decline his option. That way they can play Boban even more next season, like we pointed out several times.
I mean, you're paying Boban $21 million. Like, what's the point of paying him that money if you're just going to have him warm the bench for the majority of his time? He's got to get a little bit more playing time eventually.
Yeah, definitely. Hashtag free Boban. Now, speaking of Andre Drummond, the Pistons were exploring trade options involving Drummond and Jackson. That headline came right before the 90-91 win over the Dallas Mavericks. And then later on this past week, they discussed with the Orlando Magic about trading Reggie Jackson for former Piston DJ Augustine and Jeff Green. It would be nice for DJ Augustine to return to Detroit. And if they traded Reggie to the Magic, it would be sad to see him go, but except for his arrogance and his return to the lineup from his injury. But Jeff Green, you got a scouting report on Jeff Green?
Well, Jeff Green, I guess in a way, you could say yes, I do, because actually, coincidentally, I play NBA 2K17, and in my career mode, Jeff Green is one of my teammates. So, in terms of Green, he is a 6'9" small forward. He is primarily a 3. He can throw in a little bit of 4 every once in a while, but he's used as a small forward, as a 3. Again, 6'9", has good height on him. He's actually a pretty good, decent free throw shooter. He did have a bad year with the Clippers, but for the most part, can be a reliable scorer. This is his 10th year, or 9th year in the league. He was drafted originally by Seattle, of course, played for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Coming out of college, he was a Big East Player of the Year. I believe he played at Georgetown. He played at Georgetown, had a very solid couple of years there, was the Big East Player of the Year, all first team, all of that. So he came in, he's been a little bit of an underperformer, so to speak, in terms of his height and talent, but he is, at the very least, a decent player. Can give you some good minutes off the bench, and again, is a very viable wing player. Now, granted, this is a team that already has the likes of John Lure, and Tobias Harris, and Marcus Morris. So throwing in Jeff Green to that mix will be an overload, so to speak, of 3-4 hybrids, so to speak. So it depends on, does this mean another guy will be going in return, or do we have to reconfigure the lineup? That's the only questions that provides to me. But other than that, I wouldn't mind this pickup. I think he'd be a serviceable player for the Pistons.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad, wouldn't it? So, the Pistons are in their All-Star break, and then they return home to the Palace not until Thursday when they welcome in the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets are very close to the Pistons in pursuit of that 8th and final playoff spot. That's a big game for the Pistons and for the Charlotte Hornets. That's going to be a good one. And then the Pistons welcome in the Boston Celtics next Sunday at 6, a week from tomorrow, at 6 o'clock at the Palace of Auburn Hills. Last time they met, the Celtics blew the Pistons out of the water at TD Bankworth Garden. Don't remember what the final score was, but that was like weeks ago. And
I don't think it was a blowout. I think it was. I think they beat them by 3 points. By 4 points, 13-109, by 4 points.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Isaiah Thomas really came along and he scored like 23 or 24 in the fourth quarter, had 41 overall in the game, was really the difference behind Boston winning that game.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So, we can hardly wait until Thursday when the Pistons take on the Hornets at the Palace of Auburn Hills. That's going to be quite a battle in that playoff race.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how, assuming, because I believe that is the trade deadline, the 23rd, correct?
Yep.
So, assuming Reggie Jackson is still on the team by that point, it'll be very interesting to see how he counterparts against Kemba Walker, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So Walker and Michael Gilchrist will be that backcourt that the Pistons are going to have to pay attention to, because they can score from outside as well as distribute the big uglies inside as well. So those are two key players that the Pistons are going to have to keep their full eye on to prevent them taking over the game as much as possible.
That's true. Well, we're still not done yet. We got 2 teams left to cover, but first, let's delve into one of them, and the Red Wings, for example. We got to get them off our chest too. The Red Wings got shellacked by the Minnesota Wild 6-3, but in that game, Gustav Nyquist, in that first period, slashed Minnesota Wild defenseman Jared Spurgeon viciously in the face. That Spurgeon was bleeding and bruising all over his left cheek. And after that game, Gustav Nyquist was welcome to an in-person hearing, and he declined it. So he decided to take the phone hearing call on Wednesday afternoon, and it took a few more hours than I expected before Nyquist received it, and it was a 6-game suspension by the NHL Department of Player Safety for that slash. And a lot of people may say that was it was too light. It should have been 10 or 20 games, but I'd say mostly 10 games. But that's one of our 5 questions again. But there's no doubt it was a vicious slash. But Gustav Nyquist, understandably, is not a repeat offender. This was in fact this was his first offense in the National Hockey League.
If there's one thing you can say about Gustav Nyquist is that he doesn't have this sort of reputation as being a dirty player or a headhunter or any of that. So this could help him out. Probably was the reason why he didn't get a longer suspension. But nonetheless, this was a very risky and flat out dangerous. You said it was vicious. I think it was just dangerous because a high stick can go anywhere, especially when you're putting it directly near the guy's line of vision. That could hit him in the eye, hit him in the ear. Especially if you hit him in the eye, you talk about vision damage, potential blindness. Luckily, he was Spurgeon was wearing a face guard, so it didn't hit him in the eye. But still, that is a very bad area to take any shot at, especially a high stick. So, see that he didn't get too much damage from what was already a dangerous risk was a bit relieving, but still should not have come to that to begin with. Nyquist definitely lost his cool. He should not have, and hopefully he learns from this punishment.
Yeah, because Jared Spurgeon was roughing up Nyquist, and then Nyquist decided to slash him with his stick, and that's not the way to go.
I understand responding, but he could have found a much better way to respond to that.
Yeah, definitely. Simply by just giving him just a shove back, they could have gone for 2 minutes for roughing instead of all this instead of this dangerous risk. So that was on the day that suspension came on the day where later that night the Red Wings got shut out by the St. Louis Blues 2-0 on NBCSN's Wednesday night rivalry. The Wings weren't showing much continuity whatsoever. The Blues scored first, and it stayed 1-0 until 10.2 seconds left. Jaden Schwartz added the empty netter to seal it for the St. Louis Blues, and the Red Wings are still stuck at 49 points, 22-25-10, dead last in the Eastern Conference, solo, and 10th place in the wild card, of course. They are now tied with only the Dallas Stars for the 4th worst amount of points in the National Hockey League standings, and that does spell a top four draft pick coming up this summer as of right now.
Yeah, and guess who else is next on the schedule for them? Guess who's on the menu for them? The Washington Wizards and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Washington, yeah. That was a bit of comedy right there. Technically, the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Alex Ovechkin, T.J. Oshie, and Braden Holtby, and then Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Matt Murray, and Chris Kunitz and Phil Kessel and company.
In the Eastern Conference, prepare for another bludgeoning. That's all I got to say.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for that. Later today at 2 on Saturday on Fox Sports Detroit, they welcome in the President's Trophy leading Capitals. And then they go to Pittsburgh and play the Penguins Sunday at 3 at Consol Energy Center on NBC. And then Tuesday, they host the New York Islanders at 7:30. And then they take an entire week off, 6 days of rest, before they go to Western Canada to play the Canucks, Flames, and Oilers. The Vancouver Canucks, Calgary Flames, and Edmonton Oilers after that. But we're going to preview those 3 opponents next on episode 253. So that leaves us with one team left, and that's the Tigers.
That one is long gone.
Pitchers and catchers reported to training camp in Lakeland, Florida earlier this past week on a Tuesday. Now I think the entire team is reporting to training camp to join them as well. It's February 18th now. Pitchers and catchers are scheduled to report on February 14th. The rest of the entire team was scheduled to join them February 18th, which is today, as we are live on episode 252 on Spreaker as we speak. Just so we thought we'd give our audience an update on that. February 23rd, 5 days away as of right now, as of this point of this podcast, the Tigers begin their first spring training game against the Florida Southern College Moccasins at Joker Marchant Stadium in Lakeland, Florida. Part of it, which they renovated behind the left field fence, behind the left field grass seats, technically, as a new scoreboard. And then the day after that, on February 24th, the Baltimore Orioles come into Lakeland, Florida, and so on. So check out Tigers.com for the entire spring training schedule and the regular season schedule. Also go to MLB.com to search that too. But mostly check out Tigers.com. So, it's now time for 5 questions. Are you ready, Ed?
Yes, I am. But before we get to 5 questions, there's a little minor last minute of Tigers news, so to speak. Central League describing that they signed 2 players to minor league deals. One was an outfielder, the other was a left-handed pitcher. What was their names? Excuse me.
By the way, for those who still don't know, but of course they will anyway, Justin Verlander will be the opening day starter.
Right.
On April 5th, I believe.
Yeah, he'll be the opening day starter. Brad Ausmus has said it as much.
Of course.
He kind of figured that, right? He's been their long-term horse for a while, so he definitely deserves his honor, and he'll get to go. Lowe and Zagurski. Lowe as in L-O-U-G-H and Zagurski. Z-A-G-U-R-S-K-Y. Those were the players that were signed to minor league deals by the Tigers. Oh, by the way, a little bit late developing breaking news if you want to flash the moniker or whatever. Don Kelly announced his retirement.
Oh, my.
Yeah, Don Kelly baby, no longer playing. He announced it yesterday, and it was since announced today within the last 30 minutes or so that he will join the Tigers organization as a pro scout / assistant to player development. Oh, good for you, Don.
Best of luck to Don Kelly in his future endeavors. He gone.
That one is long gone.
So with that, now then, 5 questions. Let's let them rip.
Absolutely.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth.
Question number 1. Did Mark D'Antonio, the head coach of the Spartan football team, deserve the 1-year extension despite all the sexual assault hoopla?
I think, yes, he does deserve the extension based on the simple fact of on his resume, carte blanche, the capital that he has built up through his now decade, it seems, his decade as being MSU coach. Definitely deserves an extension. I would just argue that they picked the wrong timing to announce this extension. I would not have minded if they put this off for another couple months or so, or at least around the time of the spring game or anything. This season was long before fall practices kicked up, but to do it now in the midst of this turmoil, strategically not a good move from a image standpoint, in my opinion, or PR.
I'd have to agree.
Next question.
Question number 2, how closer do the Michigan Wolverines get to the top 25 rankings? Can you try to estimate the rankings outside the top 25?
I would say, well, I looked at one on MGO blog that says they may have a 10-palm ranking of 30, so that's, if we were to believe that, then they may not be too far off, but that entirely depends on how they finish this stretch. If they go 4-1, they'll be in the top 25 without question, especially if they go 5-0. 2-3, I doubt it, but if they go 3-2, that means that lets you know they finished their season on a positive mark. They went 3-2 in their last 5 games. They might not have won a conference title, but they assured themselves a good spot in the tournament, depending on how they go early on in the conference tournament. In terms of, but like I say, if I could only see them sniffing the top 25 if they either go 4-1 or 5-0 in these last 5 games. Other than that, they should just, I think they would be more concerned or more satisfied with just making the tournament and not have to worry about being a bubble team or an IT team.
Getting warmer, folks.
Next question.
Question number 3, should ESPN color commentator and talk show host Dan Dockich have been suspended, if not fired?
Fired, no. Suspension, possibly. Fine, I would say yes. I would have gone with a fine at the very least. There needs to be some form of repercussion to say, hey, you can't do this type of crap. I think he might have got off easy, unless it's still yet to be announced or whatever the case. But this needed to be nipped in the bud immediately as soon as it happened. The fact that it didn't lets me know that they probably won't do anything about it. If they do, it'll be something very minor. It'll be akin to a slap on the wrist. But for me, I would have fined him and most likely probably suspended him. So yes, I would say yes, he should have gotten a suspension. Not firing, I think that would have been a little too much because he is expressing his First Amendment right. I think firing over something as trivial as this would have been too very tacky on ESPN's part. I think a suspension was warranted.
Where is your honor, dirtbag? You are an absolute disgrace.
Next question.
Question number 4, what are the chances that the Pistons trade Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson?
Both highly unlikely. I would not be surprised if they trade one.
Reggie Jackson.
Most likely, I was going to say most likely Reggie, because I doubt they'll be willing to find a good enough deal where they give away Drummond and get a whole lot of help in return, like draft picks, an equal starter, closer, if not more than Drummond's caliber. That's why most likely, if they were to trade anyone, it would be Reggie. They would get at least a little bit more players back. You know, again, it wouldn't be a big blockbuster in terms of trading away Drummond, where there's got to be some type of equivalent exchange here. So the safer route would probably be Reggie, in my opinion.
Next question.
Question number 5, should Red Wings left winger Gustav Nyquist's 6-game suspension have been longer? I'd say 10. I'd say yes, but not more than 10.
And I agree with you on the 10-game suspension as well. Yeah. Right, especially nowadays when we're so concerned of players taking injuries or any type of risk, headshots, face shots. There needs to be a tougher credence for that. And I think, now, like I said before, Gustav Nyquist, he does not have this reputation of being a headhunter or dirty sack crap. So he got off this time, in my opinion, with this. But he needed to have some sort of punishment. That's why the NHL went with 6-game variety. But even still, that's a very, very dangerous play that could have resulted in a horrible injury for Spurgeon. So I would say, yes, he should have gotten no more than 10 games. I think 20 would have been a little bit excessive, but it needs to be more than 6, without question.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So that's our 5-question segment for all the listeners and fans out there. If you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. That wraps up episode 252 of Spreaker's Feed of the Michigan Sports Truth. Ed, before I let you go, I want to remind you and all the audience to follow Jeff Moss, the founder and editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag, on Twitter, and vote for his DSR's Worst Detroit Sports Media Personality Tournament Bracket. The play-in segments have just begun last night, and they continue this morning. The play-ins are only, you can only vote on Twitter, but once the tournament begins, which is Monday night, you can vote on both on Twitter at Jeff Moss DSR and in the Facebook group Detroit Sports Rag, all in one word. So, Ed, I'll talk to you again next week on episode 253, with that being said.
Absolutely. Duly noted, Taylor. Thanks for that. I'm definitely going to be placing my vote as much as I can. It's actually one of my favorite, most anticipative aspects of all these sports all year, because it involves ridicule and mocking someone. So, yes, that may sound a little bit sick to say, but it's all done in good humor. So I can't wait to see how this year's installment unfolds. Should be a riveting one, but I can't wait for next week's episode. Talk to you then.
Absolutely. Take care.
Yep, you too.
Thanks. And before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media, on Facebook and Twitter and all social media sites. Have their friends share that as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast is in search of local advertising sponsors within the state of Michigan. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, you can follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio DET, that's Sports Radio Det, and send them a direct message or email them at Sports Radio Detroit in the contact section, or email Roger Castillo at raj81 at gmail.com. Also, like their Facebook page and join their Facebook group. And finally, find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips and at EdSmith313. Make sure to like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group. We'll talk to you next week for episode 253 on Spreaker. Thanks very much for listening. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.